The wagon lurched to a stop in front of the sprawling ranch house, and Olivia Gardner felt every bruise and ache from 3 weeks of being treated like a sack of grain rather than a person with feelings and a beating heart. She peered through a gap in the canvas covering, her green eyes taking in the dusty expanse of Chisholm Ranch in Lincoln County, New Mexico Territory. The year was 1878, and she had traveled from St. Louis under circumstances that made her stomach turn with humiliation. Her uncle had gambled away everything he owned, including apparently his conscience, and when a man named Wallace had offered to settle the debt in exchange for a mail-order bride, her uncle had signed papers without even consulting her. The driver, a gruff man who smelled of tobacco and whiskey, yanked the canvas aside. "Get out. This is where you belong now." Olivia gathered her worn carpetbag, the only possession she had left, and climbed down from the wagon bed where she had been forced to ride among crates of supplies and feed sacks. Her legs trembled as her boots hit the ground, dust rising around her ankles. Her dark hair had come loose from its pins, hanging in tangled waves around her face. Her dress, once a respectable gray calico, was stained and wrinkled beyond recognition. The front door of the ranch house opened, and a man stepped onto the porch. He was tall, probably in his mid-20s, with sandy brown hair that touched his collar and sharp blue eyes that widened as he took in the scene. He wore dusty work clothes, a leather vest over a chambray shirt, and well-worn boots. His jaw was covered with several days' worth of stubble, but there was something gentle in his face despite the hard lines that came from years working under the harsh New Mexico sun. "What in blazes is going on here?" The man's voice carried across the yard as he descended the porch steps. The driver spat a stream of tobacco juice into the dirt. "Got a delivery for Kyle Wallace. One mail-order bride as ordered. Sign here." The man, who Olivia assumed must be Kyle Wallace, looked at the paper thrust toward him, then at Olivia, then back at the driver. A muscle worked in his jaw, and she could see anger building behind those blue eyes. "I never ordered any such thing," Kyle said, his voice dangerously low. "Got the paperwork right here. Payment was received in full. She's yours now." The driver shoved the paper more insistently toward Kyle. Olivia's heart sank. If this man refused her, where would she go? She had no money, no family worth claiming, and no way to return to St. Louis even if she wanted to. She stood there, trying to maintain what little dignity she had left, though she felt tears threatening to spill. Kyle took the paper and scanned it quickly. His expression darkened further. "This has my father's signature, not mine, and my father died 6 months ago. Not my concern. The deal was made, money was exchanged. She's delivered." The driver started to climb back onto the wagon seat. "Hold on just a minute," Kyle said, stepping forward. "You transported a woman like cargo, in the back of a wagon with supplies. That's how it was paid for. Now, if you will excuse me, I got other deliveries to make." Kyle's hand shot out and grabbed the driver's arm. "You will address her with respect, apologize for your treatment, and then you will leave my property before I forget my Christian upbringing and knock your teeth down your throat." The driver's eyes widened slightly. He glanced at Olivia with something like annoyance. "Sorry, miss," he muttered without sincerity. "Not good enough," Kyle said. His grip tightened. The driver actually looked uncomfortable now. "I apologize for the rough transport, miss. It was not gentlemanly of me." Kyle released him, and the driver wasted no time climbing onto the wagon and snapping the reins. The horses lurched forward, and within moments, the wagon was disappearing down the long road back toward town, leaving Olivia alone with this stranger who apparently had not expected her arrival. For a long moment, Kyle just looked at the paper in his hands, his jaw working as he read through the details. Finally, he lifted his eyes to meet hers, and what she saw there surprised her. Not anger directed at her, but something softer. Compassion, perhaps. "Miss," he said, his voice much gentler now, "I am truly sorry for whatever circumstances brought you here. I can see you have been treated poorly on your journey." Olivia swallowed hard, trying to find her voice. "I understand if you do not want me here. I realize this was not your doing. If you could perhaps direct me to the nearest town, I will find some way to manage." Kyle shook his head slowly. "The nearest town worth calling such as ours from here, and I would not send a dog out in this heat without proper provisions, let alone a lady who has clearly been through an ordeal." "No, miss, you will not be going anywhere today." He took a step closer, and Olivia instinctively took a step back. Kyle stopped immediately, raising his hands in a peaceful gesture. "I mean you no harm. I give you my word on that. But I need to know your name and how you came to be part of this arrangement." "Olivia Gardner," she said quietly. "My uncle owed gambling debts. Apparently, someone approached him with an offer to settle those debts in exchange for arranging a marriage. I did not know about any of it until 2 days before I was put on a train to New Mexico. My uncle told me I had no choice, that the law would see it as a binding contract, and that if I refused, he would be sent to prison and it would be my fault." Kyle's expression grew even darker. "Your uncle is a coward and a scoundrel, no offense intended, none taken. I have come to the same conclusion." A ghost of a smile touched Kyle's lips, then faded. "This is a mess. My father must have made this arrangement before he died, probably during one of his trips to St. Louis for cattle business. He had been pressuring me to marry, said this ranch needed a woman's touch and that I needed to start thinking about the future of the O'Donnell family line." O'Donnell. So that was his full name, Kyle O'Donnell. "But I am not some prize to be won or ordered," Olivia said, finding some steel in her spine despite her exhaustion. "I have a mind of my own and a heart that will not be bartered like livestock." "I could not agree more," Kyle said firmly. He gestured toward the house. "You are a guest here, not a delivery. Please come inside. You look like you have not had a decent meal or a bath in weeks. We will figure out the rest after you have had a chance to recover from your journey." Olivia felt tears prick her eyes again, but this time from relief and unexpected kindness. "Thank you," she whispered. Kyle picked up her carpet bag without asking and started toward the house. Olivia followed, her legs unsteady. As they climbed the porch steps, he held the door open for her. "I should warn you," he said with a hint of amusement in his voice. "The place is not exactly neat. I have been managing the ranch on my own since my father passed, with just a couple of ranch hands who bunk in the barn. Housekeeping has not been high on my list of priorities." Olivia stepped into the house and looked around. He had not been exaggerating. The main room was spacious, with a large stone fireplace dominating one wall, but dust covered most surfaces. Dishes were piled in a wash basin near what appeared to be the kitchen area. Books and papers were scattered across a large wooden table. Boots and work gloves lay wherever they had been dropped, but despite the mess, there was something warm about the space. The furniture was well made, clearly crafted with care. Curtains hung in the windows, faded but still serviceable. A rocking chair sat near the fireplace, and Olivia could imagine someone sitting there on cold winter evenings. "The house has 3 bedrooms," Kyle said, setting her bag down. "My father's room, my room, and a guest room that my mother used for sewing before she passed. You will take the guest room. It has a bed and a wardrobe, and the window faces east, so you will get morning light. I will heat water for a bath, and I will see what I can put together for supper." "You do not have to do all that," Olivia protested weakly. "Yes, I do." "You are a guest," and you have been mistreated. The least I can offer is basic hospitality." He paused, meeting her eyes. "And I want you to understand something, Miss Gardner. You are not obligated to me in any way. I do not recognize my father's arrangement, and I do not expect anything from you. Once you are rested and recovered, we will figure out what you want to do next. If you want to return to St. Louis, I will arrange it and pay for proper transport. If you want to stay in New Mexico but not here, I will help you find respectable employment or lodging. If you want to stay here as a guest until you decide, that is also acceptable. The choice is entirely yours." Olivia stared at him, searching his face for any sign of deception or ulterior motive, but all she saw was sincerity and genuine concern. This man, this stranger, was offering her something no one had offered in months: choice. "I do not know what to say," she admitted. "You do not have to say anything right now. Just rest. The guest room is through that door on the right. I will bring water for washing, and then I will work on heating enough for a proper bath. It will take some time." Olivia nodded and walked toward the door he had indicated. The room beyond was indeed dusty, but the bed looked comfortable, covered with a faded quilt in a star pattern. The window did face east, and late afternoon light filtered through, making dust motes dance in the air. She sat on the edge of the bed, and it was only then that the tears finally came. She wept quietly, releasing weeks of fear, anger, and uncertainty. When the tears finally subsided, she felt hollow but also somehow lighter. True to his word, Kyle knocked softly on her door a few minutes later with a pitcher of fresh water and a clean towel. "Not hot, but cool water might feel good after that dusty journey," he said, averting his eyes respectfully. "Thank you, Mr. O'Donnell." "Kyle, please. Formality seems unnecessary given the circumstances." "Then you should call me Olivia." He nodded and withdrew, closing the door behind him. Olivia washed her face and hands, then attempted to restore some order to her hair. She braided it simply and pinned it up, knowing it would need a proper washing to be truly clean. Looking at her reflection in the small mirror above the dresser, she barely recognized herself. Her face was thinner than it had been, with dark circles under her eyes. But at least she looked more human now. When she emerged from the room, the sun was beginning to set, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple. Kyle was at the stove, actually cooking something that smelled surprisingly good. "I am not a great cook," he admitted when he noticed her, "but I can manage the basics. Beef stew with vegetables from the garden, biscuits that may or may not be edible, and coffee strong enough to wake the dead." "It smells wonderful," Olivia said honestly. "The bath water is heating. Should be ready after supper. I set up the tub in the washroom through there." He gestured to another door. "I will make sure to stay well away to give you privacy." They sat at the table after Kyle cleared away some of the papers. The stew was actually quite good, hearty and flavorful. The biscuits were a bit dense but not terrible. The coffee was indeed strong, and Olivia found herself grateful for it. "Tell me about the ranch," Olivia said, wanting to break the slightly awkward silence. Kyle looked up, surprised by the question. "Well, it has been in my family for 15 years. My father bought the land and built this house when I was 10. We run cattle mostly, some horses. It is a good spread, about 2,000 acres. Water rights from the river, which is worth its weight in gold out here. My father built it into something profitable, something we could be proud of. It must be difficult running it alone. I have help. 2 ranch hands, Tom and Charlie. Good men, hard workers. We manage. But my father was the real rancher. He understood cattle and land and business in ways I am still learning. He died of a fever that came on sudden. 1 week he was fine, the next he was gone. I am sorry for your loss." Kyle nodded, his expression softening. "Thank you. It is strange how grief works. Some days I am fine, getting on with work and life. Other days I turn expecting to see him, to ask his advice, and the loss hits me all over again. I understand that feeling, Olivia said quietly. My mother died when I was 16. My father followed 2 years later. I thought my uncle would care for me as families should, but he saw me more as a burden than anything else. Then your uncle is a fool. Anyone can see you are educated and capable. The way you speak, the way you carry yourself despite everything you have been through. Olivia felt warmth rise in her cheeks. My mother insisted on education. She taught me to read before I was 5. My father, when he was sober, used to bring home books. I read everything I could get my hands on. My mother was the same way, Kyle said, his face lighting up slightly. She had been a school teacher before marrying my father. She taught me not just reading and writing, but literature, history, even some philosophy. My father thought it was foolishness for a rancher, but Mother insisted. She said a man should be more than just his work. They talked more easily after that, the initial awkwardness fading. Olivia learned that Kyle was 25, just 2 years older than herself. He had gone to school in Santa Fe for a couple of years before his mother's death brought him home to help his father. He loved the ranch despite its hardships. He read voraciously, mostly histories and adventure novels. He played the guitar, though not well by his own admission. In turn, Olivia told him about her life in St. Louis, about her dreams of perhaps becoming a teacher herself someday, about her love of music, and how she missed having access to a piano. She told him about the humiliation of learning she had been bartered away, of the train journey where she had at least been treated like a passenger. But then the degrading final leg by wagon. By the time they finished eating, full darkness had fallen. Kyle checked the bath water, declared it ready, and excused himself to go check on the horses in the barn. The bath was blissful. Olivia soaked until the water cooled, scrubbing away weeks of grime and travel. She washed her hair 3 times to get it truly clean. When she finally emerged, wrapped in a robe she found hanging on a hook, she felt like a new person. Kyle had left a lamp burning in the main room but had himself disappeared, probably to his own room to give her privacy. Olivia found her carpetbag in the guest room and pulled out her nightgown, simple but clean. She crawled into bed and fell asleep almost immediately, exhausted but for the first time in weeks feeling safe. She woke to sunlight streaming through the window and the smell of coffee. For a moment she was disoriented, then memory came flooding back. She dressed quickly in the only other dress she owned, a faded blue cotton that had seen better days. In the main room, Kyle was already up, looking like he had been awake for hours. "Morning," he said with a smile. "I made coffee and there is bread and butter if you are hungry. I have to ride out and check the south pasture, but I should be back by noon. Make yourself at home. There are books if you want to read, and the pantry is stocked if you want to cook anything." "Kyle," Olivia said hesitantly, "I do not expect to be waited on like a guest indefinitely. If I am staying here for any length of time, I should contribute. I can cook and clean. I can help." He studied her for a moment. "I do not want you to feel obligated. I do not. But sitting idle would drive me mad. Let me help, please. It would make me feel less like a burden." Kyle nodded slowly. "All right. But you are not a burden, Olivia. I want you to know that." After he left, Olivia looked around the house with fresh eyes. She had a sense of purpose now. She started by tackling the dishes, heating water and scrubbing until everything was clean. Then she moved to dusting, finding cloths and working through the main room methodically. She swept the floors, shook out the rugs, and opened windows to let fresh air circulate. In the pantry, she found flour, lard, eggs from the henhouse Kyle had mentioned, and various other supplies. She made a proper breakfast that she kept warm for Kyle's return, and started bread dough rising for dinner. When Kyle came back, he stopped in the doorway and stared. The house looked transformed. Everything was clean and orderly, the windows sparkled, and the smell of fresh bread filled the air. "Olivia, you did not have to do all this," he said, but there was appreciation in his voice. "I wanted to. It felt good to be useful." They fell into a routine over the following days. Kyle worked the ranch with Tom and Charlie, who eyed Olivia with curiosity but treated her with respect after Kyle made it clear she was a guest and off-limits for crude comments or inappropriate behavior. Olivia cooked, cleaned, and slowly brought order to the house. She mended clothes, tended the small vegetable garden she found behind the house, and even started organizing Kyle's chaotic collection of papers and books. In the evenings they talked, about everything and nothing. Kyle told her stories about growing up on the ranch, about learning to rope cattle and break horses, about nearly getting bitten by a rattlesnake when he was 12 and being saved by his father's quick reflexes, about his mother's gentle nature and his father's stern but fair hand. Olivia told him about city life in St. Louis, about the riverboats and the grand houses, about the libraries and theaters she had occasionally been lucky enough to visit. She told him about her mother's love of poetry and her father's melancholy that had only deepened after her mother's death, eventually drinking himself into an early grave. 3 weeks passed, then 4. Olivia knew she should make a decision about her future, but she found herself reluctant to leave. The ranch had begun to feel like home in a way St. Louis never had. And Kyle, she had to admit to herself, had become more than just a kind host. She found herself watching for his return each day, her heart lifting when she saw him riding in. She noticed little things, how his eyes crinkled when he smiled, how gentle his hands were when handling the horses, how he hummed quietly to himself when he thought no one was listening. She noticed the way his hair curled slightly at the nape of his neck, the way his voice deepened when he was tired, the way he always made sure she was comfortable and had everything she needed. Kyle, for his part, was equally aware of Olivia. He found himself thinking about her while working, wondering what she was doing, looking forward to coming home in a way he never had before. The house no longer felt empty and lonely. It felt alive, filled with good smells and warm light and the presence of someone who actually cared. He noticed everything about her, the way she hummed while cooking, the same way his mother had, the way she frowned slightly when she was concentrating on mending, the way she laughed at his terrible jokes, the way the evening light caught in her dark hair, making it shine, the way her green eyes sparkled when she was happy. He was falling in love with her, and it terrified him. One evening, as they sat on the porch watching the sunset, Kyle finally broached the subject they had both been avoiding. "Olivia," he said quietly, "we need to talk about your situation." Her stomach clenched. "I know. I have been here over a month. I cannot impose on you indefinitely." "That is not what I mean. You are not an imposition. But I realize you have been in limbo, uncertain about your future. If you want to go to start fresh somewhere, I will help you. I have some money saved. I can pay for your passage to California or back to St. Louis or wherever you want to go. I can write letters of reference, help you find employment, whatever you need." Olivia felt her throat tighten. "And if I do not want to go?" Kyle turned to look at her, his blue eyes intense in the fading light. "Then I need to know what you do want, because I cannot continue this way, pretending I do not feel what I feel." "What do you feel?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "I think you know," he said roughly. "I have tried to be honorable, to give you space and freedom to choose your own path. But every day that passes, I find it harder to imagine this house without you in it. I find it harder to remember what life was like before you arrived. And I know it is wrong, given how you came here and the fact that you should not feel any obligation to me, but I cannot help how my heart responds." Olivia's breath caught. "You have feelings for me. Is that so surprising? You are intelligent, kind, capable, beautiful. You have brought life back to this place, back to me. I wake up happy now, looking forward to the day. I come home eager instead of just tired. You have done that, Olivia. You have changed everything." "I thought I was imagining it," Olivia said, her own voice shaking now. "I thought perhaps I was projecting my own feelings onto you because I was grateful for your kindness." "Your own feelings," Kyle repeated, hope flaring in his expression. "I love you," Olivia said simply. "I think I started falling in love with you the moment you told that horrible driver to apologize, when you called me a guest instead of a delivery, when you gave me choice instead of obligation. Every day since has only deepened what I feel." Kyle stood abruptly and held out his hand. Olivia took it, and he pulled her to her feet. They stood close, his hands gently holding hers. "I do not want you to stay because you feel you have nowhere else to go," he said intently. "I do not want you to choose me out of necessity or gratitude. If you stay, if you choose this life, I want it to be because you truly want to be here. Because you want me, not just safety or security." "Kyle," Olivia said, reaching up to touch his face, feeling the rough stubble under her fingertips. "I have never felt safer or more secure than I do here with you. But that is not why I love you. I love you because of who you are. Your kindness, your integrity, your humor. The way you care for your animals and your land. The way you talk about your parents with such love and respect. The way you treated me like a person worth respecting when I had been treated like property. I love you and I want to stay, not as a guest, but as someone who belongs here, with you." Kyle pulled her closer, wrapping his arms around her. "Then stay. Be my wife, not because of some contract my father made, but because we choose each other, freely and completely." "Yes," Olivia whispered against his chest. "Yes." Kyle pulled back just enough to look at her face, and then he leaned down and kissed her. It was gentle at first, tentative, as though he was still afraid she might pull away. But when Olivia's arms went around his neck and she kissed him back with equal fervor, the kiss deepened, becoming a promise and a claim all at once. When they finally broke apart, both breathless, Kyle rested his forehead against hers. "I am going to do this properly," he said. "Courtship, engagement, a real wedding. I want everyone to know you chose me and I chose you." "I would like that," Olivia said, smiling. Over the next weeks, Kyle courted Olivia in earnest. He brought her wildflowers from the prairie, their colors bright and cheerful. He took her riding, teaching her how to sit a horse properly, laughing with her when she bounced awkwardly at first but praising her as she improved. He played his guitar for her in the evenings, his voice rough but sincere as he sang old ballads. He took her into town, to the small settlement of Lincoln, where he introduced her to the shopkeepers and the few other ranching families in the area. He bought her fabric for new dresses, ribbons for her hair, and books he thought she would enjoy. He held her hand openly, making it clear to everyone that she was his intended. Olivia bloomed under his attention. She smiled more, laughed more freely. She met his affection with her own, learning the boundaries of propriety while still finding ways to show him how much she cared. She sewed him new shirts, cooked his favorite meals, and listened with genuine interest to his plans for expanding the ranch. 3 months after Olivia's arrival, Kyle went into town and returned with a simple gold band. That evening, he got down on one knee in the parlor and formally asked her to marry him, presenting the ring with hands that trembled slightly. "It was my mother's," he said. My father gave it to me after she died, said I should give it to the woman I loved when the time came. I cannot imagine anyone more worthy of wearing it than you." Olivia accepted through happy tears, and the ring fit perfectly, as though it had been waiting for her all along. They were married a month later in a small ceremony in Lincoln. Tom and Charlie stood as witnesses, along with several townspeople who had become friendly with Olivia during her visits. The preacher, an earnest young man newly arrived from the East, performed the ceremony with enthusiasm. There was no organ, but someone played a fiddle, and Olivia carried a bouquet of prairie flowers. Kyle wore his best suit, brushed and cleaned until it looked nearly new. Olivia wore a dress she had made herself from cream-colored fabric Kyle had insisted on buying, with lace at the collar and cuffs. She had never felt more beautiful or more loved. When the preacher pronounced them man and wife, Kyle kissed her thoroughly, to the cheers and whistles of the assembled guests. They had a simple celebration afterward, with food and dancing and genuine joy. That night, as they returned to the ranch, now truly their home together, Kyle carried Olivia over the threshold. He set her down gently in the main room, now spotlessly clean and decorated with more of the prairie flowers. "Welcome home, Mrs. O'Donnell," he said softly. "I have been home for months," Olivia replied, pulling him close. "But this makes it official." Their wedding night was tender and passionate, a discovery of each other that left them both breathless and deeply connected. Kyle was gentle but passionate, and Olivia responded with equal fervor, finding joy and pleasure in his arms. The months that followed were some of the happiest of Olivia's life. She and Kyle worked side by side, building their life together. The ranch prospered under their joint efforts. Olivia took over the household accounts and proved to have a sharp mind for figures, finding ways to save money and increase profits that impressed even the experienced ranchers in the area. She started a proper garden, growing vegetables and herbs that improved their meals and provided extras to sell in town. She learned to ride well enough to help with some of the lighter ranch work, checking fences and moving cattle. She became friends with the few other ranch wives, forming a community of women who supported each other in the isolation of ranch life. Kyle expanded the herd carefully, building their reputation for quality cattle. He built a new barn with space for more horses. He added rooms to the house, including a proper office for Olivia to manage the accounts and a larger bedroom for them with windows facing both east and west to catch sunrise and sunset. A year into their marriage, Olivia realized she was pregnant. She told Kyle one evening after supper, watching his face carefully for his reaction. His eyes went wide, then filled with tears. He pulled her into his arms and held her, trembling slightly. "A baby," he whispered. "We are going to have a baby. Are you happy?" Olivia asked, though she could see the answer in his face. Happy does not begin to cover it. Terrified, thrilled, grateful beyond words. "A baby, Olivia, our child." He was attentive before, but during her pregnancy, Kyle was almost comically protective. He insisted she rest more, worry less, let him handle anything heavy or strenuous. Olivia tolerated his fussing with good humor, knowing it came from love. When her time came in the spring of 1880, it was during a thunderstorm that made travel impossible. Kyle sent Tom racing to town despite the weather to fetch the doctor or the midwife, anyone who could help. But the baby came faster than expected, and in the end, it was just Kyle and Olivia, facing the intensity of birth together. Kyle proved surprisingly calm despite his fear, following Olivia's instructions, remembering things his mother had told him years ago about helping with difficult calvings. When their son finally entered the world, squalling and red-faced and perfect, Kyle caught him in shaking hands and held him while tears streamed down his face. "A boy," he said in wonder. "Olivia, we have a son." Olivia held out her arms, exhausted but radiating joy, and Kyle placed their baby in her arms carefully, as though he might break. They named him Matthew, after Kyle's father. He had his father's blue eyes and his mother's dark hair, and he was strong and healthy from the first moment. Tom arrived back with the doctor just as the storm was breaking, and the doctor examined both Olivia and Matthew, declaring them both in excellent health considering the circumstances. "You did well," the doctor told Kyle with approval. "Your wife and son are lucky to have you." Kyle never left Olivia's side during her recovery, handling Matthew with careful reverence, changing nappies and walking the floor with him when he fussed. He sang to his son in his rough voice, the same ballads he had sung to Olivia during their courtship. Matthew thrived. He was a happy baby who grew into a curious toddler, following his father around the ranch as soon as he could walk, fascinated by the horses and cattle. Olivia watched her husband and son together, her heart full to bursting with love for both of them. 2 years after Matthew's birth, Olivia found herself pregnant again. This time, the birth was easier, attended by the midwife and several of Olivia's friends from neighboring ranches. Their daughter came into the world peacefully, with dawn light streaming through the windows, and they named her Caroline after Kyle's mother. Caroline was quieter than Matthew had been, more observant, with her mother's green eyes and a serious expression that made everyone laugh. Matthew adored his baby sister, helping care for her with the seriousness of a 4-year-old who takes his responsibilities seriously. The ranch continued to prosper. Kyle's careful management and Olivia's sharp business sense made them one of the most successful operations in the county. They added more land, hired more hands, and built a new bunkhouse for the workers. They replaced the old barn with a larger one and added a proper stable for the horses. But despite their growing wealth, they never forgot their roots or the kindness that had brought them together. When they heard of other women in situations like Olivia had been in, mail-order brides mistreated or abandoned, they opened their home. More than one woman found refuge at the O'Donnell Ranch before finding her own path. They helped young couples just starting out, offering advice and sometimes financial assistance. They paid fair wages and treated their workers with respect. They became pillars of the community, known for their generosity and integrity. Matthew grew tall and strong, with his father's love of the land and his mother's quick mind. Caroline proved to have a gift with horses that surprised everyone, able to gentle even the most skittish animals. They were good children, raised with love and discipline in equal measure. In 1885, Tom announced he was getting married to a widow from town, and Kyle hosted the wedding at the ranch. It was a grand celebration with half the county in attendance. Watching Tom dance with his bride, Olivia leaned against Kyle's shoulder, feeling the solid warmth of him. "Happy?" Kyle asked, as he so often did. "Incredibly," Olivia answered truthfully. "Sometimes I still cannot believe this is my life, that I get to wake up every morning next to you, watching our children grow, building this life we have created." "I know what you mean," Kyle said quietly. "I think about that day you arrived and how close I came to not being here. I had thought about going into town that morning, but something made me stay. If I had left, that driver might have just abandoned you here, or worse, taken you somewhere else. The thought of never having met you, of missing out on all this, it terrifies me." "But you were here," Olivia said, turning to face him. "You were here, and you treated me with kindness when I had been shown none. You gave me choice when I had none. You loved me when I felt unlovable. You gave me this beautiful life, these beautiful children. You gave me everything, Kyle." "No," Kyle said, cupping her face in his hands. "You gave me everything. You brought light and life and love into this place. You made me want to be better, to build something worthy of you. Every good thing in my life now traces back to you, Olivia. Every single one." They kissed as the party continued around them, their children playing with other ranch children, their friends and neighbors celebrating new love while they honored their own enduring bond. 2 years later, Olivia was pregnant again, and this time they welcomed twin boys who kept them both running from dawn until well past dark. They named them Daniel and James, and they were as different as two boys could be. Daniel was adventurous and bold, always getting into mischief. James was thoughtful and cautious, often pulling his twin back from the brink of disaster. With 5 children, the house was chaotic and loud and full of life. Olivia sometimes looked around at the noise and mess and felt overwhelmed, but then Kyle would catch her eye and smile, and she would remember how far they had come. From a frightened woman delivered like cargo to a confident mother and partner, beloved and respected. Matthew grew into a fine young man, taking on more responsibility at the ranch. At 18, he was nearly as good a rancher as his father, with his own ideas about improvements and innovations. Caroline, at 16, was becoming a beautiful young woman with her mother's grace and her own quiet strength. The twins, now 12, were terrors but also sources of endless entertainment. Kyle, now in his 40s, had lines around his eyes from years of sun and laughter. His hair was touched with gray at the temples, but to Olivia, he was as handsome as the day she first saw him, stepping off that porch to defend her. They sat on the porch one evening, their favorite place to watch the sunset and reflect on the day. The children were all inside, supposedly doing evening chores but more likely engaged in some elaborate game. From inside came the sound of laughter and good-natured arguing. "You ever wonder what your life would have been like if you had refused me?" Olivia asked quietly. "If you had sent me away that first day," Kyle took her hand, threading his fingers through hers in a gesture so familiar it was like breathing. "I used to wonder in the early days, but not anymore. I cannot imagine any version of my life without you in it. You are as essential to me as air or water, more so probably. I could survive physical hardship, but I could not survive losing you." "You will not lose me," Olivia promised. "I am here for all the days we have left, however many that may be." "Then I am the richest man alive," Kyle said simply. They sat in comfortable silence, watching the sun paint the sky in shades of gold and crimson. The land stretched out before them, thousands of acres they had built into something prosperous and lasting. But the land was not what mattered most. The house behind them, full of noise and love and life, that was what mattered. "I should check on the children," Olivia said eventually. "They can manage for a few more minutes," Kyle said, tightening his hold on her hand. "Stay with me, watch the sunset. We will check on them together in a moment." So Olivia stayed, her hand in her husband's hand, her heart full and content. She thought about the frightened young woman she had been, traveling across the country against her will, uncertain and alone. She thought about the moment Kyle had declared her a guest, not a delivery, and how that single act of kindness had changed everything. She thought about the years since, the challenges and triumphs, the ordinary days and extraordinary moments. The births and celebrations, the hard work and small pleasures. The steady, enduring love that had grown between her and Kyle, deepening with each passing year until it was the foundation on which everything else was built. "What are you thinking about?" Kyle asked, as though sensing her reflective mood. "About how grateful I am," Olivia said. "About how a terrible circumstance led to the greatest blessing of my life. about how lucky I am to have found you, to have built this life with you." "The luck was all mine," Kyle said. "I was alone, going through the motions of life without really living. You changed all that. You made me whole again." "We made each other whole," Olivia corrected gently. Kyle smiled and brought her hand to his lips, kissing it softly. "Yes, we did." The sun sank below the horizon, and stars began to appear in the darkening sky. Inside the house, someone called for them, probably needing help settling an argument or seeking comfort from a scraped knee or bruised feelings. Kyle and Olivia stood together, still holding hands, and walked back into their home, their life, their happily ever after. Years continued to pass, marked by seasons and celebrations, challenges and changes. Matthew married a rancher's daughter from the next county, a smart young woman named Sarah who fit into the O'Donnell family as though she had always been there. They built a house on a piece of land Kyle deeded to them and started their own family, giving Olivia and Kyle their first grandchildren. Caroline surprised everyone by going to teachers' college in Santa Fe, fulfilling the dream Olivia had once had for herself. She returned summers to help at the ranch, but made a life teaching in town, eventually marrying the new doctor and settling in Lincoln. Daniel and James, the adventurous twins, stayed on the ranch, each taking responsibility for different aspects of the operation. Daniel handled the cattle, James the horses. They worked in tandem as they had their whole lives, complementing each other's strengths. As Olivia and Kyle grew older, they gradually turned more of the ranch operations over to their sons, though neither of them ever fully retired. Kyle still rode out most mornings to check the herd, and Olivia still managed the books and accounts, though Caroline now helped review the numbers. Their children often found them on the porch in the evenings, sitting close together, hands entwined, watching the sunset as they had done for decades. It had become a family joke, how they still acted like newlyweds after all these years. "Tell us again how you met," the grandchildren would beg, and Olivia and Kyle would exchange glances, their eyes still lighting up when they looked at each other. "Your grandfather saved me," Olivia would begin. "Your grandmother saved me," Kyle would counter. And they would tell the story together, each adding details the other forgot, laughing at the memories, still finding new things to appreciate about that fateful day when a frightened young woman was delivered like cargo, and a lonely rancher chose kindness over convenience. On their 25th wedding anniversary, their children threw them a celebration at the ranch. The whole county seemed to turn out, a testament to the respect and affection the O'Donnells had earned over the years. There was food and music and dancing, speeches and toasts, laughter and joy. At one point, Kyle pulled Olivia away from the crowd, leading her to the barn where they could have a moment of relative quiet. "I have something for you," he said, pulling a small wrapped package from his pocket. Olivia opened it to find a delicate gold locket. Inside was a tiny daguerreotype on one side, a picture of them from their wedding day, young and hopeful. On the other side was a newer photograph, their entire family gathered together. "To remind you of where we started and where we are now," Kyle said softly. "To remind you that every moment between these two pictures has been a gift, that you have been the greatest gift of my life." Olivia's eyes filled with tears as Kyle fastened the locket around her neck. "How did you get so romantic?" she teased gently, though her voice was thick with emotion. "I had a good teacher," Kyle said, pulling her close. "You taught me how to love, Olivia, how to be a good husband, a good father, a good man. Everything good in me comes from you." "That is not true," Olivia protested. "You were good from the start. You were good when you defended me to that terrible driver. You were good when you called me a guest and offered me choice. You were good when you courted me properly instead of claiming some supposed contract. You have always been good, Kyle. I just loved you for it. They stood there in the barn, holding each other, the sounds of celebration distant but joyful. After a moment, Kyle pulled back slightly and began to hum, then sing softly, one of the old ballads he had sung to her during their courtship. Olivia laughed and let him lead her in an impromptu dance between the stalls, neither of them moving particularly gracefully anymore, but both moving in perfect harmony with each other. When the song ended, Kyle kissed her, and it was as sweet and full of promise as their first kiss on the porch all those years ago. "We should get back to the party," Olivia said eventually. "They will wonder where we went." "They know where we went," Kyle said with amusement. "They know we need these moments, just the two of us." "Have I told you lately that I love you?" Olivia asked. "You tell me every day in 1,000 different ways," Kyle answered, "but I never get tired of hearing the words. I love you, Kyle O'Donnell. I loved you when I was young and frightened and uncertain. I loved you when we were building this life together, facing challenges and celebrating victories. I love you now, with gray in your hair and lines on your face, with our children grown and grandchildren playing at our feet. I will love you until my last breath, and beyond if such things are possible." Kyle's eyes were bright with unshed tears. "And I love you, Olivia O'Donnell. You are the best thing that ever happened to me. The best decision I ever made was welcoming you as a guest, and the best gift I ever received was when you chose to stay. You are my heart, my home, my everything." They walked back to the celebration hand in hand, their love as strong and true as it had ever been. The party continued late into the night, filled with the warmth of family and friends, the satisfaction of a life well lived, the joy of enduring love. As the years continued to pass, Olivia and Kyle aged together with grace and dignity. They faced the inevitable losses that come with age, burying old friends and accepting the limitations of their bodies. But through it all, they had each other, and that made everything bearable. They celebrated their 30th anniversary quietly, just family, sitting around the table in the house that had witnessed so much of their life together. Their children and grandchildren crowded in, and later grandchildren sat on laps and underfoot, a testament to the love that had started with a simple act of kindness decades before. Kyle looked around the table at the faces he loved, then at Olivia sitting beside him, her hand in his as always. Her dark hair was silver now, her face lined with age, but to him she was as beautiful as ever. More so, perhaps, because every line represented a memory, every silver strand a year of love and partnership. "I want to say something," Kyle announced, and the chatter died down. 30 years ago, your mother came into my life under circumstances neither of us would have chosen. She was frightened and alone, and I was lonely and grieving. But somehow, out of that difficult beginning, we built this." He gestured around the table, encompassing not just the people but the ranch, the life, the legacy. "We built love and family and something lasting. I could not be more grateful for that wagon that brought you to me, Olivia, or for your courage in staying, in choosing me, in building this life with me. You are and always will be the love of my life." There was not a dry eye at the table. Olivia squeezed his hand, unable to speak for the emotion clogging her throat. Finally, she managed, "And you are mine. Always." They celebrated late into the evening, sharing stories and laughter, creating new memories to add to the decades of memories already accumulated. When everyone finally left or went to bed, Kyle and Olivia sat on the porch one more time, looking at the stars. "You remember our first night out here?" Kyle asked. "When I told you I had feelings for you and you said you loved me?" "I remember every moment of it," Olivia said. "I was so afraid you would send me away, but also afraid you would ask me to stay for the wrong reasons. When you told me you wanted me to choose freely without obligation, that was when I knew for certain that I loved you. Best night of my life, Kyle said simply. Mine too. Well, that and our wedding night, and the nights each of our children were born, and countless other nights since. Olivia leaned her head on his shoulder. We have had a good life, have we not? The best, Kyle agreed. No regrets, no looking back with sadness. Just gratitude for every day we have had together. They sat in comfortable silence. Two people who had spent so many years together that they no longer needed words to communicate. The love between them was palpable, a living thing that had grown and deepened over 3 decades until it was simply part of who they were. Eventually, the night grew cold, and they went inside to the bedroom they had shared for 30 years. They prepared for bed with the ease of long practice, each knowing the other's rhythms and preferences. When they climbed into bed, Kyle pulled Olivia close, her back against his chest, his arm around her waist. "Good night, my love," he whispered into her hair. "Good night, my heart," Olivia whispered back, and they drifted off to sleep together as they had done thousands of times before, secure in their love and grateful for the life they had built from the most unlikely of beginnings. The years that followed brought their own joys and sorrows. Grandchildren grew and brought home their own spouses. Great-grandchildren arrived. Kyle and Olivia slowed down further, spending more time on the porch and less time actively working. But they remained interested and engaged, offering advice when asked, supporting their family in whatever ways they could. On a summer evening in their 42nd year of marriage, Kyle suffered a sudden pain in his chest while sitting on the porch with Olivia. She called for help immediately, and Daniel and James came running, along with Caroline, who happened to be visiting. They sent for the doctor, but everyone could see it was serious. Kyle lay in his bed, surrounded by family, Olivia holding his hand tightly. He looked around at the faces of his children and grandchildren, his eyes finally resting on Olivia's face. "Do not go," she whispered, tears streaming down her face. "Please do not go yet." "I do not want to," Kyle said, his voice weak but clear. "But if I must, I go knowing I had everything a man could want. I had love, real love, the kind most people only dream about. I had children who made me proud every day. I had a life full of purpose and meaning. And most of all, I had you, Olivia. For 42 years I had you, and that is more than I ever deserved." "You deserved everything," Olivia said fiercely. "You deserved the world, and I only wish I could have given you more." "You gave me everything," Kyle insisted. He squeezed her hand weakly. "Do not grieve too long. Live, Olivia. Keep watching the sunsets. Keep telling our story. Keep loving our family. Promise me." "I promise," Olivia choked out, though she could not imagine life without him. Kyle smiled, his eyes never leaving her face. "I love you. From that first day to this last moment, I have loved you. In whatever comes next, if there is consciousness beyond this life, I will be waiting for you. And if there is not, then I am grateful that my last thoughts are of you." "I love you," Olivia said through her tears. "I will always love you." Kyle's eyes drifted closed and his breathing grew shallow. Surrounded by his family, held by the love of his life, he slipped away peacefully, a small smile on his face. Olivia stayed beside him long after he was gone, holding his hand, memorizing his face. She had known this day would come eventually, but knowing did nothing to ease the pain. Kyle had been her partner, her love, her home for more than 40 years. How did one go on after losing that? But she had promised him she would try, and Olivia always kept her promises. The funeral was one of the largest Lincoln County had ever seen. People came from all over, ranchers and townspeople, former ranch hands and business associates, people whose lives Kyle and Olivia had touched over the decades. They spoke of his integrity, his kindness, his fairness. They spoke of the love between him and Olivia that had been an inspiration to everyone who knew them. Olivia stood through it all with quiet dignity, her children supporting her on either side, her grandchildren and great-grandchildren surrounding her. She accepted condolences and kind words, but inside she felt hollowed out, as though the best part of her had been buried with Kyle. In the days and weeks that followed, Olivia went through the motions of life. She ate when her children insisted. She allowed herself to be cared for. But she felt like she was sleepwalking, going through a pale imitation of living without truly being present. One evening, Matthew found her on the porch, sitting in her usual spot, staring at the sunset with unseeing eyes. "Mother," he said gently, sitting beside her, "you are not all right." "I know," Olivia admitted. "I do not know how to be all right without him. He was my other half, Matthew. For 42 years we moved through life together. I do not know how to do this alone." "You are not alone," Matthew said firmly. "You have us, all of us. We love you, and we will help you through this." "I know you will try," Olivia said, "and I appreciate it more than I can say, but there is a loneliness that comes from losing your partner that no amount of family love can quite fill. There is a space beside me that will never be filled again." Matthew was quiet for a moment. "Father made me promise something before he died. He made me promise that if anything happened to him, we would make sure you kept living. Not just existing, but truly living. He said you had given him life and joy, and he wanted to make sure you had the same, even without him." Olivia felt tears slide down her cheeks. "That sounds like your father. So what would bring you joy, Mother? What can we do to help you live again?" Olivia thought about that. What had brought her joy besides Kyle? She looked around at the ranch, at the land they had built into something lasting. She thought about their story, the unlikely beginning and the beautiful journey that had followed. "I want to write it down," she said slowly. "Our story. From the beginning to the end. I want to preserve it so that future generations will know what we had, so that your grandchildren's grandchildren will know about the love that started everything." "Then write it," Matthew encouraged. "Take all the time you need. We will manage the ranch. You write, and keep Father's memory alive through words." So Olivia began to write. She wrote about the frightened young woman delivered like cargo and the kind cowboy who called her a guest instead. She wrote about falling in love, about choosing each other freely, about building a life together. She wrote about the challenges and triumphs, the ordinary days and extraordinary moments. Writing brought Kyle back to her in a way. As she recorded their conversations, their moments together, she could almost hear his voice, see his smile. It was painful but also healing, a way to process her grief while honoring the life they had shared. The writing took months, but gradually, Olivia found herself returning to life. She still missed Kyle with every breath, but the sharp pain of grief softened into a gentler ache. She could smile when remembering happy moments instead of only crying. She could watch the sunset and find beauty in it again, even without Kyle beside her. She continued to write, not just their story but letters to her grandchildren and great-grandchildren, sharing wisdom and memories, family history and personal reflections. She wanted to leave behind more than just property and possessions. She wanted to leave behind a record of love, of the importance of choosing kindness, of building something lasting. 2 years after Kyle's death, on what would have been their 44th anniversary, Olivia sat on the porch with her children and grandchildren gathered around. She had finished the manuscript of their story, and she read portions of it aloud to her family. There was laughter and tears as she read, recognition of moments they had witnessed or heard about. When she finished, there was a long silence. "It is beautiful, Mother," Caroline finally said. It is a testament to what you and Father built together. It is your legacy, Daniel added. Both of you. Love is always the legacy that matters most, Olivia said quietly. Everything else fades, but love endures. Your father taught me that. As the family dispersed, Matthew lingered. You seem better, Mother, more yourself. I am finding my way, Olivia admitted. The pain is still there, and I suspect it always will be, but I can breathe around it now. I can find joy in memories instead of just sorrow and loss. Your father would want that for me. He would, Matthew agreed. He loved you so much, Mother. We all saw it, every day of our lives. You too were the example we all tried to follow in our own marriages. Then his legacy lives on in all of you, Olivia said with satisfaction. In the love you show your own spouses, in the kindness you extend to others, in the integrity you bring to everything you do. Kyle lives on through all of you. Olivia lived another 8 years after Kyle's death, remaining active and engaged with her family and community. She saw more great-grandchildren born, attended more weddings, celebrated more anniversaries. She was present and loving, a matriarch who embodied the strength and grace that came from a life well lived. She never remarried. When well-meaning friends suggested she might find companionship with one of the many widowers in the area, she politely but firmly declined. She had known the kind of love most people only dreamed of, and nothing could compare to what she had shared with Kyle. On a spring evening in her 74th year, Olivia sat on the porch watching the sunset one last time. Her body had grown frail, her steps uncertain, but her mind remained clear. She thought about Kyle, about the life they had built, about the family that surrounded her. She thought about that young woman who had arrived at this ranch 50 years before, frightened and uncertain, delivered like cargo to a man who did not even know she was coming. She thought about the cowboy who had stepped off the porch and declared her a guest, offering kindness when she had known only harshness. She thought about every moment that had followed, every conversation and kiss, every challenge faced and overcome together. She thought about children born and raised, about a ranch built into something prosperous and lasting, about love that had deepened with each passing year, until it became the very foundation of her existence. As the sun sank below the horizon, painting the sky in shades of gold and crimson just as it had done thousands of times before, Olivia felt a strange sense of peace settle over her. The pain in her chest that had been growing all day suddenly eased. Her breathing, which had been labored, became smooth and effortless, and there, in the golden light of sunset, Olivia saw him. Kyle, looking exactly as he had on their wedding day, young and strong and smiling at her with all the love she remembered. "Hello, my love," she whispered, reaching out her hand. "Hello, my heart," Kyle said, and his voice was exactly as she remembered. "I have been waiting for you." "I kept my promise," Olivia said. "I lived. I loved our family. I told our story, but I am ready now, ready to be with you again." "Then come," Kyle said, taking her hand. His touch was warm and solid, more real than anything had felt in years. "Come with me, and we will watch sunsets together again." Olivia stood, and suddenly she was young again too, her body strong and pain-free, her heart light. She looked back once at the ranch, at the house where she had lived for 50 years, where her children and grandchildren would continue the legacy she and Kyle had built. "They will be all right," Kyle said gently. "We raised them well. They will carry on what we started." "I know," Olivia said. And she did. Their love, their values, their legacy would continue through generations. They had built something that would outlast them both. Hand in hand, as they had been in life, Olivia and Kyle walked into the golden light together. Their love story, which had begun with an unlikely delivery and a simple act of kindness, had come full circle. They had lived fully, loved deeply, and left behind a legacy that would endure. The next morning, Caroline found her mother on the porch, sitting peacefully in her chair, a serene smile on her face. She was gone, but she looked happy, as though she had finally found what she had been seeking. At Olivia's funeral, which was nearly as large as Kyle's had been, the family read portions of the manuscript she had written. They told the story of how their parents had met, of the love that had grown between them, of the life they had built together. They were devoted to each other from the moment they met until their last breath, Matthew said in his eulogy. And I like to think they are together again now, watching over all of us, still holding hands, still watching sunsets together. It was a comforting thought, and one the whole family embraced. They buried Olivia beside Kyle, under a cottonwood tree with a view of the prairie they had both loved. The headstone was simple, listing their names and dates, with one additional line that said everything that needed to be said. Together, always. The ranch continued to thrive under the management of their children and grandchildren. The house remained in the family, passing down through generations. And on summer evenings, family members would sometimes gather on the porch to watch the sunset, and they would tell the story of Olivia and Kyle, of the woman delivered like cargo and the cowboy who called her a guest. It became a family legend, a reminder of the power of kindness, the importance of choice, and the enduring nature of true love. Young couples would hear the story before their own weddings, reminded that the strongest marriages were built on mutual respect, genuine affection, and the daily choice to love and honor each other. The manuscript Olivia had written was eventually published, a small volume printed by a press in Santa Fe. It became a beloved local story, then gradually spread farther. People read about Olivia and Kyle and found hope in their story, inspiration in their love, encouragement to build their own lasting relationships. Years turned into decades, decades into a century. The ranch remained in the O'Donnell family, though it evolved with the times. But the porch remained, the same porch where Kyle had first asked Olivia to stay, where they had courted and fallen deeper in love, where they had watched thousands of sunsets together. And sometimes, on quiet evenings when the light is just right, people swear they can see two figures sitting on that porch, holding hands, watching the sunset together. Just shadows and tricks of the light, surely. But then again, maybe not. Maybe some loves are strong enough to transcend time and death, to linger in the places that mattered most. Maybe Olivia and Kyle really are still there, together always, their love as enduring as the land itself, a testament to the truth that sometimes the most beautiful things in life come from the most unexpected beginnings. Their story, which began with fear and uncertainty, ended with love and legacy. It reminded everyone who heard it that kindness matters, that choices matter, that treating people with dignity and respect can change everything. It reminded them that true love is not found in perfection, but in commitment, not in grand gestures but in daily choices, not in easy times but in facing challenges together. The legacy of Olivia Gardner and Kyle O'Donnell lived on, not just in the descendants who carried their blood, but in the story itself. A story of hope and second chances, of kindness and choice, of love that grew from the most unlikely soil into something beautiful and lasting. And every time someone read their story or heard it told, every time a young couple chose kindness over convenience, love over obligation, partnership over dominance, Olivia and Kyle's legacy grew stronger. They had lived well and loved deeply, and in doing so they had left the world better than they found it. That, in the end, was their greatest achievement. Not the ranch, though it prospered. Not the children, though they were wonderful. Not the material success, though it was substantial. Their greatest achievement was the love they had shared and the example they had set, inspiring others to seek the same in their own lives. From a terrible beginning had come a beautiful ending. From cargo delivered had come a guest, welcomed. From fear and uncertainty had come love and belonging. From two separate lives had come one unified whole, stronger together than either could have been alone. It was a story worth telling, worth remembering, worth passing down through generations. It was a story of the Wild West, not of gunfights and outlaws, but of real people building real lives with courage and love. It was, simply put, a love story for the ages. And somewhere, perhaps on a porch that exists beyond time and space, Olivia and Kyle O'Donnell sit together still, watching eternal sunsets, their hands clasped, their love undiminished. Together always, just as they promised, just as it should be. The end of their story, and yet also the beginning of something that would never truly end, a love that had become eternal.